evening, or good afternoon, good morning, whenever you're listening, pipe pals and gals. Holy smoking pipe padre, coming back at you with another video on this 14th Sunday in April. 14th Sunday, 14th of April. Easter greeting. Christ is risen. Truly he's risen. God bless you. And happy Easter. Maybe a couple of days late, but for some of you. Yeah, so last Sunday was, of course, Pascha in the Orthodox tradition. The Sunday before that, of course, was Easter for Catholics and separated brethren type people in the Protestant tradition. Hold on a second. It's been probably about a month, maybe a little bit longer since I made a video. And I did not store this pipe correctly. I remember I pulled it out a few minutes ago. It's my J.M. Boswell, the one I got back in November, which I love this pipe. I love the stem, the acrylic stem. I love the Danish freehand carving, just beautiful pipe. I love the way it feels in my hand. Love the way it smokes. I love the way it draws. Man, this was a good purchase, a good investment, I would say. So I'm looking at the frame here, and I think I'm going to move the camera up just a wee bit more. There you go, lads and lassies. Right. And I'm smoking I thought this was the Scottish blend, but I think this is the English blend, the G.K. Chesterton English blend, which is quite delicious and enjoyable. Yeah. Okay. I think we can go with this here. Let's see if I can angle that down a wee bit there. Okay. I think that's good. What do you think? Hopefully it's working out. Okay, so yeah, it's been a while since I made a video. And I just thought I would, hold on just a second here. I'm going to try something here. Yeah, that's a little bit better, I think. Okay. So, it is I was going to say it's a beautiful spring day, but we got inundated a couple of days ago with an awesome snowstorm. It's really a spring snowstorm, and those are the best, I think. The first snowstorms of the year are special. They're kind of magical. They tell you that, the holidays are approaching and all that good stuff. But when winter really sets in, and it does, it can be kind of a challenge. And the beauty sometimes turns into kind of something a little more worrying. It's like, it looks beautiful out there, but now the snow's building up on the roof and we got to get it shoveled, and sometimes you can't find people to do that. Oh, and I am going to make a little announcement here that this is, I guess you could call this an adult beverage. Yes. But not to worry, pipe pals and gals, it's not an alcoholic adult beverage. It's just good old-fashioned caffeine. After a full year and a few weeks, I started drinking caffeine again. And so far, it's been a couple of weeks. Started on Easter Sunday. And hold on a second. Yeah, there we go. I started again. Yeah, it's been over a year of caffeine, no caffeine. But I have to say, I missed it for a lot of reasons. Socially, a lot of people that I know and love, they love to drink coffee, and they're not crazy like me. They're trying to give it up once a year. So I decided, you know what, I just feel like I'm not connecting with people like I used to because I don't really drink coffee, and I just felt that it kind of was one of those things that was a social lubricant that was important, and plus it does help in other areas. I haven't noticed it being really detrimental. Now, if I give it up again next year for Lent, I'll probably feel it like I had for this was the best Lent I ever went through because I didn't have any real withdrawals from the caffeine. But I don't really know if not drinking coffee had any real noticeable benefits. Now, maybe in the next few weeks and months, I might discover that maybe my sleeping is off. I haven't discovered that that's the case. Now, I am drinking. It's about a little bit after 5 right now in the evening and the afternoon, so maybe this little bit might send me and keep me awake tonight. I don't know. But I saw a couple of people that I've been watching, especially when it comes to news-related podcasts. There's a guy named Cash Jordan. I guess he's a young guy. He's in New York City. Interesting young guy, but he's a very, very strong political commentator, and he gives some pretty good insight into what's going on. And he drinks this stuff called Cafe Busto. I don't know if it's an Italian coffee or a Spanish coffee or a Mexican coffee. I saw some in the store, and I said, that's what that young guy drinks, and, I'll try it out. So we'll see. Yeah. I've been started drinking the coffee again. Yeah. Boy, that's pretty cloudy there. So we've had some snow, still snow on the ground. It's melting really quickly. So again, I haven't posted in probably about a month. I noticed, I don't know what happened, if I got somehow banned or something. I didn't get any comments on my last video. I don't know if it was somebody just didn't care to respond, or they were just so disgruntled with what I said. I don't know. It was the first time in years I've had a video that didn't have any comments, none whatsoever. And so it seemed a little out of the ordinary, and I don't know what happened. So we'll see if this pattern continues, and if it does, then maybe it might be time for me to hang up the old pipe and go do something else. I don't know. I mean, I like making videos, as you know, and I don't do it for monetary stuff. I do it to be an active member of this old thing we call the YouTube pipe community. I've been here for about 11, 12, 13 years, I guess. And people come and go, and that's just life. So, I'm not saying I'm in any ways thinking about quitting or I'm feeling sorry for myself or anything like that. It's just that, I hate to say this, but I think YouTube has kind of run its course for a lot of things. Now, don't get me wrong. I like YouTube, and unfortunately, I probably waste too much time watching it, especially with this whole news cycle thing, trying to find out, the latest, and the most accurate information of things like what's going on in the Iran military campaign. What's going on there? And unfortunately, a lot of YouTubers that are into the political sphere, they post almost like diarrhea, and everything they post is just not really accurate. And it's very frustrating. So I just kind of I started saying, well, wait a minute. Every time I go to this guy's post or this gal's post, 9 times out of 10, they're just talking to be talking. They'll put a thumbnail out saying, for example, great example, this little lady, the little old lady, Nancy Guthrie lady, somebody had just said, hey, I just saw something about this Nancy lady being found, and it was her son that killed her. And I was watching, and I'm going, I don't see anything on what's going on. And somebody else went to X and said, no, that's fake, And that's frustrating. And I think these YouTubers need to be a little more responsible in what they post, because you can only, kind of skunk and people so many times. And, you have like, I got this breaking news flash, and you go to their page and all they're doing is talking about some possible scenario that might happen if blah, 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 blah. They're speculating, if that. And it gets to be a real, it's very frustrating. So I think YouTube, in some ways, people have gotten on there. And of course, I know people make a living. And I don't fault them for that. I mean, if you monetize your videos and you have good content and it's accurate and it's uplifting, great. No problem. But if you're just posting just to get clicks, you're clickbaiting people, people are going to get to a point where they say, hey, enough's enough. I ain't gonna listen to you. And so I think that maybe that's a lot of people are just getting burned out on YouTube. I don't know. I know I am to some extent. There are some good things on YouTube. There's a lot of garbage on YouTube. Sometimes if you're trying to figure out how to fix something, I know that a lot of people I know, they'll go to YouTube and find a fix-it video and see if that'll help them with whether it's, trying to fix a dent in your car, or declog a sink trap in your bathroom or whatever, or, clean out mold and mildew in your shower, okay, maybe you'll find somebody who has some pretty good tips that can help you. And so anyway, but this leads me to what I'm going to talk about tonight or this afternoon, whatever. So look outside, it's still afternoon, just late afternoon, about 5, almost 5:30. It's a beautiful sunny day today, so that's why the snow is melting really quickly. It's receding like my hairline has receded. It's going pretty fast now. But again, talking about clickbait and rage bait and all this stuff, apparently the Donaldus Magnus is... Rush Limbaugh used to call President Reagan Ronaldus Magnus, and I started calling to President Trump Donaldus Magnus, Donald the Great. Apparently, he's raised the ire of a lot of people now. I'm going to put the picture here. I'm going to just put it in the background, and I'm not trying to be clickbaity. I'm not trying to be rage baity. I want to talk about it, from a kind of an analytical perspective. So if this triggers you, then I apologize in advance. So here's the picture. Let's all take a look at it there, okay? And apparently this picture has really spun up a lot of people's ire. They're just absolutely enraged, about this supposedly President Trump portraying himself as Jesus. Now, I want to take exception to this because I don't see it that way. Now, I'm not saying that if you see it that way, you're wrong. Of course, there was one guy who was so adamant. I said, I think you are wrong. I said, I think you're looking at it completely from a Trump derangement standpoint, And I'm going to share with you my analysis of the whole thing. First of all, I just want to say that it's a meme, okay? Obviously, it's a meme. And whether or not he is intentionally trying to cloak himself in the image of Christ, and again, I think you can make a point that he's not doing that for a couple reasons. And like I said, I'll explain. Just give me a moment to explain. If you're already getting angry and you're starting to type in the comments and tell me how evil and bad I am, that's fine. But just hear me out. That's all I'm asking you to do is just hear me out, because I think I make a point. I think it's a valid point, and again. You can choose to see what you want to see. It's like a Rorschach chart, those ink blot images. You can see whatever you want in that. Okay, and if you want to see this as, i.e., President Trump trying to mock Jesus, then okay, that's what you see. That's what you see. I can't tell you can't see that. I'm just saying that there are other interpretations of the picture that I think are also valid. So but I'll get into that in just a moment. Reminds me of I discovered a wonderful old. This takes me back. In fact, the right stuff. I'm going to get a little sidetracked to kind of come back around the other way here, but the space race when I was a kid growing up was the most exciting thing I remember. Being an astronaut and watching the moon, the Saturn rocket take off, and and following the mission to the moon, and the earlier NASA programs of Mercury and Gemini. It was all stuff that I ate as a kid. My mom used to get mad at me because she says, you had a nightmare the other night, or you were talking in your sleep. And I said, what did I say? Oh, you were talking all that NASA mumbo jumbo stuff from Cape Canaveral. I couldn't understand a thing you were saying. I go, wow. I guess I'd swallow the astronaut pills pretty hard, because I was actually dreaming about being an astronaut. I was already talking astronautese when I was a kid, so I guess that tells you something. But anyway, one of my favorite documentaries about the Apollo program was called Moonshot, and it was about Deke Slayton, who was one of the original Mercury 9. And anyway, it's a great documentary. It's like 3.5 hours long, but if you got some time to spend, you can even put it on the background. But it just had so much wonderful stories about those astronaut guys. And Pete Conrad, who was kind of one of my favorite astronauts, again, they gave these guys all these tests. And if you see the movie The Right Stuff, that's pretty accurate what they show. But he's talking about, from a personal perspective. He says, yeah, the psychiatrist gave me one of these Rorschach ink chart cards. And as he gave it to me, I looked at him and I said, you gave it to me upside down. And he turned it. And the guy said, okay, you're done. It's like, okay. I mean, that was the perfect quintessential response to something like that. Oh, you gave it to me upside down. And he turns it right. It's an ink shot, Rorschach ink chart blob thing. Anyway, but that I get a little far afield there, but it just reminds me of, what do you see? Really, what is it that you see? So apparently, and again, I don't know what's going on. I know that the president and the Pope are exchanging, verbal, intercontinental ballistic verbiage, and then it's there anyway. Again, I tried to tell people this years ago. And the reason why, whether you love him or you hate him, President Trump is in the Oval Office, he's at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue today, is because of one thing and one thing only. And no, it's not that he cheated in the election. That's what Biden did, okay? No, the reason why he's there is because people they love to let him spin them up. President Trump, Donaldus Magnus, is a troll. He's a troll par excellence. And if people just ignored him, we wouldn't even be talking about this today. Okay. Now, I support the president as far as I can. I personally, maybe some of you are going to be upset when I say this. I don't personally see him being blasphemous, and I'm going to explain that in a minute. Not truly blasphemous. There are things that are truly blasphemous, yes, but that's not one of them. Okay. But again, people, well-meaning people, sincere people, I would say godly people who are seeking to be good, righteous Christian people. Okay, they're up in arms. They are, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it. So many people that I normally watch, and I wouldn't say I agree with them 110%. I mean, I don't think anybody agrees with anybody 110%, but for the most part, I find their content meaningful and helpful for the most part, and entertaining. So usually, I'll watch these. And I'm not going to name any names right now because I don't want to, incur any more wrath than I already am probably. But yeah. So apparently, President Trump just really, he went beyond the pale on this one, and oh my gosh, there's just the outrage, the angst, the apoplectic comments are, this was the most horrible thing in the world. Well, again, it's really not. So anyway, so let's just take a little bit of an art history lesson and kind of look at it. Let me get my old pipe fired up again. I mean, I hope I'm not firing you up too much as I fire up my pipe. Oh my goodness. Okay. Okay, so if you kind of look at the image, they say that he's portraying himself as Jesus. And first and foremost, I think he's just being a troll. He's just, okay, I think, again, you can see what you want to see. And if you see him mocking Jesus, then that's what you see. But I don't see that at all. Now, clearly he's some kind of a religious figure, I'm going to say. You know, he could be even like a fantasy figure like Gandalf or Obi-Wan Kenobi. I mean, he could be one of those kinds of mythical characters, okay? You know, because in Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, you know, the wise old wizard can heal people and raise people from the dead and all these kinds of things. You know, you look at, you know, Gandalf, you know, the wise, or even Aragorn, the king, you know, heals, you know. So the healing property isn't just reserved to Jesus. Yes, clearly Jesus did heal, and I would even say he heals today. Praise God. Can I get an amen? Okay, my little Southern Baptist is coming out of me there. But again, is he really cloaking himself in the image of Christ? Well, I think if he really was doing that, he would certainly have maybe like a beard, you know, maybe longer hair. You know, you can find lots of images in the meme world of Trump, you know, looking like an athlete or a warrior or, you know, a general or whatever. You know, I mean, they make him look like you can make make him look like anything. You know, with AI nowadays, you can, you know, and sometimes it's really convincing. But what I saw first is, okay, I didn't see Jesus. Again, now if he had like wounds in his hands, crown of thorns on his head, maybe if he had like a cross, you know, over his shoulder, or, you know, he was bleeding or something like that, or they showed the scarifications, you know, those kinds of things, that would be clearly, yeah, he's referencing the Lord Christ, the Lord Jesus. Oh, yeah, okay, that's maybe a bridge too far. But he's showing himself in religious attire, or it could be some kind of, again, look at a lot of Star Wars figures and Lord of the Rings figures. The wise guy, the wise men, I shouldn't say wise guy, the wise wizard or the wise, you know, wise man. They kind of look like monks. They look like religious figures. They're a religious kind of a figure. So there's certain things that they don to make themselves look more of a religious rather than a warrior or maybe a kingly person, okay? Now, it's true that the Old Testament prophets also healed. You know, somebody goes, well, that glowing coming out of his hand, well, that can mean divine power. The prophets used God's divine power. Moses and the staff, you know, that was divine power. Moses separating the waters, you know, you could see that as, again, the unleashing of divine power that they were get permitted to wield, okay? So again, it could be an Old Testament prophet figure, okay? And then the other thing is we also know that the apostles also went around healing people and raising people from the dead. So what I see is it could be any kind of a quote-unquote religious-ish kind of a character, to include mythical characters from Star Wars and Lord of the Rings or other fantasy, you know, mythical things. It could be something like that. He said he was trying to be like a doctor, Red Cross doctor. Well, the colors of the Red Cross are white and red. I'm just saying, you know, that's what, okay, maybe he was trying to be a healer. He was, clearly he's presenting himself as a healer. That is true. Again, now whether he's doing it in kind of a mocking way, I don't think so. But again, he is a troll, and he's probably, you know, he knows he's probably going to rile a few people because they're going to make the assumption, they're going to assume, oh, he's trying to cloak himself as a Christ figure. And that's necessarily, again, I'm trying to show you that that's not exactly true. It can be interpreted other ways. So it could be a mythical, wise person, quasi-religious, spiritual person from a myth, or fantasy. It could be even an Old Testament prophet, again, or it could be a New Testament apostle, okay? So to say that, oh yeah, he was trying to clearly mock Jesus, I don't think you can say that and you can believe that, but I think that there's a case to say, no, it could be these other things as well. They're equally valid. So if you're already in the camp that this is, blasphemy and it's beyond the pale and, oh, this guy's the most horrible thing since, sliced bread, whatever, okay, that's what you see. That's what you see. But I don't see that readily. I just kind of think, well, wait a minute, I think you're stretching. And I think a lot of people that are rushing to make that judgment are people who really don't like President Trump. And that's fine too. You don't have to like him, okay? I don't like a lot of the things that he says and does, okay? But again, I look at him as kind of like Teddy Roosevelt with a little bit more of an edge. But basically, Teddy Roosevelt was an active president who did a lot of really great things. Now, sometimes people in hindsight might say, oh, it was horrible what he did and, how he, whatever. You can have your, people who love Teddy Roosevelt and people who hate TR, But I think Trump is kind of more in the vein of TR, and I'm grateful for that. So, looking at this whole thing about the Pope and President Trump having this spat, I'm going to say something that's going to shock people. I wouldn't be surprised in another 6 months or a year that President Trump and the Pope are going to meet and they're going to be shaking hands and smiling at each other. Okay. I really, because I want to think and I want to believe that Pope Leo, even though he is influenced by a lot of left-leaning cardinals and people that really, the people that are blasphemous are what's going on in the church right now, really, when you stop and think about it. Like, for example, this is blasphemy to me, pretending that this creature is now the Archbishop of Canterbury. That's blasphemy. That's mocking God. Or stuff like this, pretending that we're saying that these people are really married. I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry if I hurt somebody's feelings, but that's not real marriage. Now, if you wanted to call it something else, knock yourself out. But that's not marriage. That's a mockery. That's blasphemy. Okay? This clearly is real blasphemy, I think. Okay? The innocent murder of little innocent children in the womb. Come on. Come on. Apparently the Pope is, we have to be for peace. Well, dear Mother Teresa of Calcutta made it very clear that as long as there's the evil of abortion, there will never be real peace. Okay? If the Pope is interested in peace, why don't you come out and talk about the real source of violence in our world that hits all countries, not just Iran or Israel or whatever, but all countries suffer this evil called abortion. Why doesn't he and the popes and the cardinals speak out against that now? Because it's politically incorrect. Leo, grow a backbone, okay? Stand up for the truth. Stop trying to, placate, and speak to your audience, a bunch of, diehard liberals, because that's all it is, Now, I personally believe somewhere in that man there is a real conscience and he knows the truth. He just is afraid, I think, to speak it out. But I think someday, maybe soon, he will be convicted to the point you're saying, you know what, I'm not going to be reading off of the liberal playing cards anymore, okay? Because they had, again, I think that he kind of was told, you need to be a counter to President Trump because now you're an American, you're first American Pope, and the people, that's ridiculous. No, that's true. I heard that was even being talked about during the conclave, and then after he certainly became elected Pope, that there was a sense that was true, that he had to be, they picked finally American so he could be a counter to President Trump, which is kind of ridiculous when you think about it. That shouldn't be the qualification of being a pope. But I think deep down inside, I want to believe that he is truly a holy man. He's a prayerful man. And eventually when he can see through the liberal talking points and say, well, for example, okay, you want to condemn war. Well, what about condemning the IRGC let's start there. These are people that have declared that they want to see the elimination of Israel and Jews. Oh, and by the way, United States is the great Satan too, and we got to get rid of them too. And the concern is that because of their belief, again, we used to believe that because of mutually assured destruction, well, no one's going to really drop the bomb, or they'd be the first one to do it. Oh no, the Islamic regime has no qualms about dropping nuclear weapons on people if they had them, because that's part of the design of Allah. Right? Okay, if you're not going to convert to Islam, we're going to kill you. Okay, so yeah, those people are dangerous, and they shouldn't have nuclear weapons. They shouldn't have weapons. Period. Now I'm going to tell you a little story. The reason why I believe this way. Now I'm going to tell you something, and it's going to upset a lot of you. But my dad was attacked by our neighbors one night. In fact, it was so bad, I never saw him again. The next time I heard anything was 10 years later, and I was 4 when he was driven away, and 10 years later I found out he died. But the neighbors came down and, well, they took care of him. That's all I'm going to say. And you might say, that's horrible. I'm so sorry that those bad people did that to your dad. Let me tell you the rest of the story, though. The reason why they came down armed with .45 caliber pistols and sticks, and they beat the heck out of him and told him he had to leave, is because earlier that afternoon, he tried to throw me off a cliff into a river. And fortunately, he was so drunk that I was able to thread myself through his, bow legs and hop back in the car, and I stayed there. He was trying to grab me. Hey, come here, little bastard. I wanted to show you something. Yeah, he wanted to show me an early death. That's what he wanted to show me. And I don't know what caused it. All I know is he had been drinking and drinking for days. And that afternoon, he decided that he was going to get rid of his family. And so when he couldn't get me thrown into the river from that cliff, thanks be to God, then he came home, and later that night, he was beating that literal hell, beating my mom to death. And thanks be to God, my mom was so concerned about my dad's violence that they had a little switch installed. And they said, if he ever comes back, you just turn that switch and a little red light will pop up on the side of the building and we'll know. And then they could hear my mom screaming. So because of the little red light they put on and hearing her screaming, they came down. Yes, they were armed with .45s and I remember it was a stick of some kind, maybe a club of some kind. And they gave him a moment of pause to say, you don't do that kind of stuff. You need to leave. You need to get out of here now. And that's the way I see it is with America going into the IRGC and trying to eliminate their potential for future aggression and violence and death. They don't need to have nuclear weapons. Absolutely not. And so if we can defang these monsters, then I say all for it. Good for you. Now, and some people say, well, war is all terrible. Well, if we lived in a true, rainbows and butterflies and sunshine and all that, yeah, but we don't. We don't. We live in a very violent world, and sometimes real peacemakers carry guns. Yeah, and I'm grateful that the Ely family, they were Big Paw and Leon was the son. They came down. I'll never forget. My mom was screaming. I was like a little 4-year-old kid. I didn't know what to do. And I remember all of a sudden I saw the son, Leon, and all I know is I looked out the window and I was terrified. I didn't know what's going on. And he holds up this .45 and he goes, shh. And he went around back. And Big Paw Ely, he went in through the front door with his gun, and basically together, my dad tried to get out the back way through the bathroom. Freeze, buddy. And then he went back out the front, and they basically broke a stick over his head because he wouldn't stop. He was crazy. He was just crazy drunk. And they finally got his attention, and they let him know that the police were coming, and he just needed to leave. And thanks be to God, he left. That's all I can say about that. Sometimes violence has to be met with violence. Like I said, sometimes peacemakers carry guns. They have to in this world. Now, again, the thing about the Pope is, he should be talking about the war on both sides of the issue, not, blaming Trump. Now, to his credit, he didn't name the president, but everybody knows that that's who he was talking about. But he also needs to hold accountable the people in the IRGC and the Islamic terrorists that have been doing this for over 47 years, okay? So just to single out one side and say they're the bad ones, that's not good. That's not a pope is supposed to be, again, a mediator. The word pontiff means bridge builder. Well, if you're, nuking one side because you don't like them, you're not really being a bridge builder either, okay? A bridge builder tries to bring both the warring sides together to bring peace. But you can't tell the people that are trying to protect themselves against these other aggressors you need to, you can't do that, I mean, I guess in his world, all war is bad. And so, what happened in World War II was just absolutely atrocious. I mean, gosh, didn't matter that the Japanese bombed us first or that, the Germans were, liquidating Jews. Oh, that we overlooked that kind of stuff. But, no, we got to blame the United States for everything. Well, I don't think that's fair. That's all I'm going to say about that. So, almost off my soapbox here. How am I doing? All right, let me get my pipe going again. There we go. So, let's get back to the Donaldus Magnus Trumpius image that has everybody all raging right now. So what is blasphemy, though, really? Okay. Now, Christianity, unlike Islam, doesn't have anti-blasphemy laws. Okay. Now, it's interesting, if you look at the life of Jesus, I'm looking at my hutch over there, and it looks like one of the panes is busted out of there. We have these little gals that come in and clean, and every now and then I'll notice that something's busted, a light or something, or they break something. They don't tell you, which I think is very disingenuous. If they break something, they should call it to your attention and say, hey, I accidentally broke this. That's not a problem. But a lot of times they'll break something, and then I'll find out a day or two later, a week later, and it really is a little bit annoying. It's like, hey, you know what? If you break something, just cop to it, and I'm not gonna make a federal case out of it, but I'm going to, say, hey, is there any way you could maybe pay for that? If it's expensive, But anyway, so it looks like a pane of glass is busted. Anyway, I'm sorry, I digress. So, but when Jesus is healing, what is blasphemy is when they attribute his power to heal and save to Beelzebul, to the devil. That's what blasphemy is. Not a cartoon image of somebody portraying a holy person. I mean, let's face it. Going back to that quote unquote that holy image or the religious image, Trump could be even an imam in that. Just saying. I mean, if you think about it, it's possible to say that he's being now if he had a turban on, that'd be more clear. But again, he could be an imam in that picture when I think about it. I mean, because he's wearing a religious garment, okay? And somebody goes, well, no, the red and white are the traditional colors of Jesus. So I'm looking at, I don't know if that's true either. I mean, there's lots of images of Jesus, and he's in different kinds of colorful costumes, clearly Middle Eastern to be sure. But, then there's a few of them that are red, and maybe there's blue, and then there's green, and then there's a combination of white and blue or white and green. So again, I don't know if that's really true. Again, if they were showing the scarification or wounds or crown of thorns or something of that nature, I could say, okay, yeah, all right. He's clearly trying to portray that he's a Christ figure. But, can you see that if you want to? I guess you can make a case for it, okay? But I can also make counter cases that show just the opposite, and it's just as convincing, I would say. So again, but real blasphemy is when we basically reject the works of God and attribute them to the works of Satan, okay? That's blasphemy. That's blasphemy 101. Even Jesus said that. So you're saying that I cast out demons by the hand of Beelzebul? I cast out Beelzebul by the hand of Beelzebul. No. Again, that's, I think, legitimate blasphemy. And again, I don't think Trump has even said in his own personal life, he says, I don't know if I'm going to be saved. He goes, I think I hear him say, he says he has a lot of doubt that he's going to make it to heaven. Okay. So he clearly knows that he's not a true righteous person. Now, maybe he has a desire somewhere, and maybe someday we'll see true repentance. But, and then the other thing is he did withdraw it almost immediately, I guess the next day, maybe 12 hours later. So knowing that he probably did offend people, and again, probably not intentionally, I mean, to really be a guilty of blasphemy, but there was a sense of contrition on his part to have it withdrawn. But again, the image is on the internet, and obviously everybody can have access to it if they want it. So there you go. But I would just say that, people are making a mountain out of a molehill, a tempest in a teapot. There are, again, more important things to be concerned about than this image. And again, I think sometimes, I'm not always impressed, or I'm not always in agreement with the style of President Trump. Sometimes he says really good things, and sometimes I cringe and I go, oh, I wish he wouldn't have said that, And I mean, apparently he's now kind of following the taking a leaf out of the other politicians' books and feels like he has to drop the F-bomb, to make a point. I kind of wish he could avoid that idea that, I have to be tough talking in order to be tough. And I don't think he needs to do that. I mean, I'll tell you, he can be very, very sobering when he wants to be, and very serious. You're going to get my attention. You don't have to use F-bombs. You don't have to get in the gutter with all the other sleazy politicians. He doesn't even need to do that. I mean, sometimes, just a look. Sometimes that guy gives you a look and you go, I wouldn't want to mess with this guy, I don't know what he's likely to do, and I don't want to, mess with him. I just want to, try to work with him, But anyway, I'm just saying that so many people that I've seen in the last 5-6 hours are just losing it, and I kind of laugh at them because I think, like I said, you're really blowing this up, and you're taking it way too seriously. It's at the end of the day, it's just a meme, okay? And if that's what you see and that offends you, then that's okay. That's you. But like I said, I think you make a case that you might be overreaching. You might be overreacting where you don't really need to be. It's like I said, probably the best thing that if people didn't like this man, just ignored him. If they had ignored him 10 years ago, chances are he probably wouldn't even be in the White House now. But everybody, he takes the air out of the room by what he says and does. And instead of, most of us recognize in our lives that, at least that's the case of me, is that most people don't take me seriously. Okay. And maybe that's a good thing. But I do know that there are just some people that just seem to, every little thing they say is scrutinized to the nth degree. And it's like, well, yeah, I guess so. But other people could have said exactly the same thing and worse, and nobody would have batted an eye, Anyway, but I just think that sometimes we allow ourselves to be enraged when we really don't need to be. It's like, okay. So President Trump or somebody in his office or somebody, I don't know, somebody was saying, I don't think Trump generated the image. I mean, could he have using AI? I guess. Again, you can generate lots of images. And again, you're just looking for something that looks kind of like a certain thing. You're not looking at all. Everybody was in, one of the things that people were doing was they were like being so hypercritical about all the different images. Oh, there's angels there. That proves that he's trying to be Jesus. I'm going, well, I don't know if that proves that he's trying to be Jesus. There are people that are worshiping him. And I'm going, again, if you've ever played with AI like Midjourney, like I have, again, it all depends on the prompt. And a lot of times I'd say 5 times out of 10, you're going to get a mishmash of a whole bunch of stuff. I've even loaded up actual photographs of the church and asked the AI to create like an oil painting, or one of my favorite art expressions is Japanese paper art, which is really awesome stuff. I don't know if you've ever heard about Japanese paper art, but it's really kind of cool. And it'll come up with some really interesting images based on the photograph, but it won't look exactly like the photograph. They'll put in different things. And you go, but that's not in the picture. And you'll go, yeah, that's true. It's not in the picture, but they add things. They interpolate things. They probably want us to put some angels in here because it said religious figure, right? Because when you think about religious figures, you think of what? Angels and clouds and maybe God rays, the light that comes from the heavens, So, you say that and it's probably going to say, oh, he's going to want this element and this image to go with this main image. And it's like, well, okay. And a lot of times you have to say, don't include angels. You have to say, the prompt is, I've only played with it a couple of times, but sometimes you have to specifically say without angels. Okay. So again, so to say that, this was all like real iconography or religious art that sometimes did have very subtle meanings, you're really loading this with much more important than it is. Okay. It's like, no, I just think somebody was just having fun. And, again, was it tasteless? You could say that, sure. You and I would have done something like that? No. But it's the Trumpster, he's the Trumpster. He's the troll, the troll par excellence. He does that just to get a rise out of people. And let's face it, he's doing it, Now, again, I would hope, so I'm going to bring my little video to a close and we'll just see what happens after that, but after I'll upload it later tonight. But I do hope eventually that it would be neat to see eventually Pope Leo and Donald Trump together, either at the Vatican or in the White House. That would be awesome. Again, to be honest, some people, this will rub some of you the wrong way. I mean, at the end of the day, they're both politicians. I mean, obviously the Pope has made it very clear that he's weighing in these political matters. And like all politicians, they will eventually have to come together and make nice in front of the cameras, and maybe they'll ball each other out behind the closed doors, or maybe like in the years past where presidents like President Reagan and President Gorbachev, met at Reykjavik, to talk about the SALT treaties. Maybe they will hopefully have some kind of a personal rapport where they can kind of realize, well, maybe you're not as bad as I thought you were. Okay. So, I'm hoping that, they will do that. Now, here's one of the things, another disingenuous thing is when Pope Francis apparently met with President Trump, they were showing pictures of him and former President, I guess, Obama, or maybe it was Biden. I can't remember who it was. They were comparing and contrasting. And so they can pull out pictures of a person with a really blank, expression on their face, or maybe kind of a negative looking, kind of not positive or happy, but just kind of, and they're saying, look, see, he hated this president, and then you go and find that there are other pictures of they're smiling together, and they're looking at the Pope's looking at Trump or whatever, and they got the big smile on his face, and giving him a present or whatever. So those things are kind of like, it's what you want to see. If you want to see the Pope hates this president or that president, but at the end of the day, again, they are politicians and they're going to do what politicians usually do. So again, I have hopes, not maybe high hopes, but hopes that maybe in the year or so, when some of this blows over, that the president and the Pope will, have a cordial little tete-a-tete, a little meeting. So I think it won't be like, oh gosh, the Pope is actually going to meet with President Trump, this is the most unheard of thing ever, No, it'll happen. Just give it time, But I do hope that the Pope will kind of balance some of the things that he is saying and not be playing to the leftist politicians here in the church and outside the church, and try to be more objective and really kind of see this from a different perspective. Instead of looking at it from just one side, he looks at it from all sides and kind of gets that 30,000 foot view, so you can see the bigger picture, because that's what's really going on. And if you get lost in the weeds on this one, then you're not really going to be helping in the long run. You just won't. You won't be effective. That's the reason why diplomats are very, very skilled people, because they are able to look at things from different perspectives. Yeah, and that's why we value diplomats, real diplomats, okay? And the Pope, again, is supposed to be, that's what the word pontiff means, bridge builder. So if you're just blowing up one side of the bridge, you're not building anything, you're destroying something. So you need to, call both sides to task, because that's clearly what's warranted here. So anyway. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to watch. I think the other one was like an hour and 10 minutes. Maybe that's why people didn't really respond to that video. So I'll keep this one under an hour. It seems like that's the sweet spot, kind of keeping around 51, 55 minutes. So I don't tire you guys out with my inane comments. So again, thanks so much for watching. I appreciate it. Yeah, let me know what you think. What do you see in that picture? Maybe you saw something completely different. I don't know. It's possible. Maybe you saw Doctor Who. Maybe he was being Doctor Who. I never thought of that, but you could make a case for that. Maybe. I don't know. Hey. All right. So much for taking time out to watch the old Padre. Again, oops. Sorry about that. Light up your world and light up your pipe. Oop. Light went out. Uh-oh. Time for a new lighter. All right. So thanks for spending time with the old Padre. We'll see ya on the next one.